Welcome back to the Lost Info podcast. As always, this is keeping you awake, Jake and Jake. We have Ole back on part two, and again, he's our code breaker and peacemaker. Uh, Excited to have him back on, but he's also got another surprise for the Lost Info podcast today. Ole, go ahead and take that away and tell us.
Who I want to introduce to you today is I would consider one of the world's most important whistleblowers at this time. His name is Cody Golden Elk Snodgrass. He's part Cherokee. And I'll just give you a background on how we met because as you know, I've been on this for many, many years. And a few years ago, I think it was 2016 or 17, I was introduced by this mysterious individual who called himself Cody Snodgrass. And I thought that was a little bit of an unusual name, but there you go. I mean, you're American. So, I mean, in America, your names are so anyway. And Cody was telling me his background about being an independent black op for more than 20 years, carrying out black ops all over the world and working sort of on a level underneath the Clintons, being involved in Arkansas with the drugs and weapon smuggling there. And anyway, he had been involved in an extreme range of different cases from, well, more or less nothing to the worst of the worst or the darkest of the dark. And he seemed to have incredible information. And what he said was that he had kept a low profile for more than 20 years after he managed to get out alive, and that he was now wanting to step forward as a whistleblower. And so he asked me if I wanted to assist him in doing that. And I said to him, you prove to me that you're true. I mean, I will do that if you are who you say you are, but I get approached by so many weirdos, so I don't know. But if you are who you say, I will stand by your side. And so for about 5-6 months, we prepared. And then in the fall of 2017, I think it was, the only way that I felt, and I think we agreed on that, the only type of security in a situation like that for a whistleblower is to get out to as many as fast as possible once you get out there, because it's only when the information is inside your head and you're sort of the minority of one, that's when you're really targeted. Because if you get eliminated, that solves their problem. But if you get it out to the information out to several million people, then suddenly if something happens to you, that will just cause major blowback to their operations and can be very, very negative, and even amplify what you have been saying if they take you out. So what we did was I prepared I think at the most we had like 5 2-hour interviews per day, and we started like 5 a.m. in the morning, and then just pumped it up once we got going. And it was a very, very bizarre trip, because I have a family. You never know the tentacles of these forces, you know, what they do or what they're gonna do with this type of information. And Cody had incredible, mind-blowing information from so many different areas. And so like more or less every time I called him, I didn't know if he was going to reply, because he was sort of crawling around on the floor in his cabin up in the mountains in Colorado with bodyguards around him. Because I mean, this was really heavily charged, this area to get into. It's like a minefield. And anyway, and every time he started his car, we were sort of expecting an explosion. It was that bad. But after a month or so, we started relaxing, and we thought, whoa, it seems like we managed to get over the worst. And Cody was finally starting also to relax a little bit and to feel that he was out on the safe side. And then boom, they hit him with a head-on collision in the car, where it was totally demolished. And he was only like a few inches from dying, and with glass in his eyes and face and his spine and face and nerves and I don't know, everything. And he's still recovering from this this accident to this very day with back operations and stuff, a lot of pain. And but what I wanted to say was that Cody was recruited very young because at least the CIA claimed that he was intelligent. I want to argue with that one, but that he had a very high IQ, at least on the paper, and sports, very good athlete and very much into biology and physics and so. And so first he refused because he didn't want to be in the agency, but then he became an independent contractor, which was totally separated from the CIA, which was perfect for them because they could at all time deny any kind of connection with him and so on. But over the years, he got himself into and was recruited for operation. He lived a total double life for more than 22 years, where he was officially having one job in the, I think, in the oil industry with a family and a child, but on the his other life was as a black op, traveling around internationally, doing all kinds of stuff, and totally driven by desire, greed, no compassion, no, you know, no feelings for people that came in his way or became his victims. But it ended up with a situation after he had been offered the job of blowing up the Alfred P. Murray building in Oklahoma City. You remember that one? Yeah, he was offered that one year before to blow that up. And when he found out that it was actually a target on American soil and that there were going to be, you know, civilians there, he absolutely refused it. But this was at a point in his career when he was heavily on drugs and alcohol and with post-traumatic stress syndromes and nerve, you know, after all of these things he had gone through. So he turned it down. And from then on, from having been an asset, he became a liability. And also at that time, he was not trustworthy at all because he was so paranoid that he was sleeping with double machine guns in his bed and tripwires outside the house. And I mean, it's like a bad movie, that type of thing. But so when he turned that job down, the CIA started seeing this as a guy who knows way too much about way too many things. So they wanted to take him out. And so there were multiple attempts on his life. He was also put in high security prison, 3 cells down from Timothy McVeigh when McVeigh was executed for this alleged terror attack in Oklahoma City. Then he managed to get out and made some kind of a deal so that they would let him stay alive. But he had sort of destroyed his own reputation. I think, as far as I remember, he took a jail sentence. I'm sorry, Cody, if I'm not getting it right, but more or less like this. And then in the end, he was hit in an ambush together with a colleague where they were using directed energy weapons against them, which sounds like science fiction, but it's actually just like a microwave. You open the lid and you aim that force and amp it up. So he was taken into hospital in the emergency ward, and his partner died, and twice he flatlined. And the first flatline, he had sort of like a classical near-death experience. And then they hit him with these, what do you call them, like these electric pads, boom, got him down again. Then the second time, he said he was vomiting, he was having cramps and stuff. And then his head fell over, and he saw this monitor where he suddenly saw himself flatline. And this time he came up and in an instant understood, oh my God, what have I done with my life? All of these things that I've done has been so negative, so negative and so dark. And so he felt incredible remorse and confusion, and while being up there, he was approached by a light being called Arara, who is a female angel. And this angel said, listen, Cody, as I'm sure you know, you have messed it up big time down there. You have caused a lot of pain and hurt and damage and death. If you want to, please continue wherever you want to go. But if you choose to go back down on Earth, Mother Earth, then I will at all times be by your side. and I will help you, and we'll sort this out, and we can pay back karma and make things, put them back in balance. So Cody chose to come back here, and from then on, his life was for years very, he was recovering, and there was a lot of remorse and guilt feelings and stuff. In the same time, he went up in the mountains north of Colorado Springs and started a healing center where he was doing everything for free, where he's helping to heal and with people with satanic ritual backgrounds or veterans or Agent Orange, or you name it. He's doing everything he can to help people in every way he can. And this is also part of, during all of these years, he was writing a book called Choosing the Light, The Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing, where he in great detail describes a lot of these things that he was involved in. So I just want to say for the listeners, I would very much like, if you respect that Cody is putting himself at risk to be with us today, because every time he's on the phone or whatever, he knows these boys, and they're ugly bastards, and they're very brutal. So we've done, I don't know how many interviews together, but every time it's sort of like, this is not a game, but it is very important that this type of info comes out then. So I hope I got it more or less right, Cody, and I thought I was going to spare you from telling the same story 1,000 times over. But one thing I really love about Cody is that he is anything from the baddest badass you can get, with knowledge about, you want to poison your mother-in-law, you want to blow up a skyscraper, till the spiritual, the spiritual realms and knowledge is extreme. And his background also as a Cherokee is very immense in these areas. So whatever area you want to go into, Cody is your guy. And this is why I brought him on this show, because whatever you want to ask, I can guarantee it will be truthful, and it will be, if he knows it, he will tell you.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot already to take in. Cody, I guess wherever you want to start out, I guess the biggest story would be talking about maybe the Clinton administration and where you were at that time and what was going on, I suppose.
Yeah, how much time do we have?
As much time as you need.
Well, I want to thank Ole for talking, and I want to thank you guys for the show, and say hello to the listeners out there. Before we start any of this, it's a big story, multiple decades in multiple countries, but we usually quote the IIPA, that's the Intelligence Identities Protection Act. It's U.S. Code Title 50, Sections 421, 426, and it states the disclosure of U.S. government operatives' identity is illegal only if it's done intentionally and with knowledge the government is still actively maintaining a cover for such operative. Some of the people, most of them are dead now, but there's still some that are alive, and we don't use their names, for them and their families. And the reason we do that, if you guys remember John Kiriakou, he was a CIA case officer. He did 30 months in federal prison for violating this IIPA Act, because he inadvertently named somebody's name that was still operational. And he was in the CIA's rendition detention and interrogation program. That's the RDI program. He was sent way back in January of 2013. So I can use some names and talk about some things, and there's other things I won't. But this is a big story, and I was in the top 1% on the SAT test in physics way back in 1974, and in 1975 in a physics department at university. I came to recruit me. I turned recruitment down at that time. But later on, did a bunch of work for them. And so I went to graduate school. I got a double bachelor of science degree in mathematics and another one in physics. And then I went to work on my master's of science degree in physics. My civilian front was being a petroleum geophysicist for both Chevron and Amoco here in the U.S. And that was, like I said, a cover. And then we were involved at the time. I was at the Amoco data center. That was for in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And way back in the 80s, 84, 85, in that area, we were involved in 3 multiply nested CIA operations. What I was in was Centaur Rose. The others were codenamed Jade Bridge and Screwworm. And if I talk and the phone drops out or cuts out or we get static, that's the deep state interfering with this. They just hit my computer with a weaponized cyber attack and ruined my computer. It's the 4th one that's been ruined. We've done under heavy duty, censorship and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, back to the Clintons. That was your first question. Yeah, that was Centaur Rose. That was a CI operation, the Rose Law Firm. That's where we got that name. And Bill Clinton was, at the time, the governor of Arkansas, and Hillary Clinton was there at the Rose Law Firm with Hubble. And, the Whitewater scandal, Jimmy and Susan McDougal, all the stuff that went on. That was a big operation, Centaur Rose. And it's because Ronald Reagan, the president, in February of 1984, the Poland Amendment was passed. Congress passed it. And what that was they didn't want to put a bunch of troops on the ground down in Central America with Nicaragua because the Russians and the communists were supplying Daniel Ortega. I've got some friends that had dinner with him in his palace down there, his little presidential home. And then we Americans were supporting the Congress. But Poland couldn't do that, so Reagan went around them and ordered CIA director to run these covert ops. And the covert ops were to, send weapons and support down to the Contras and counter the Soviet support they were getting. They want the domino theory to happen, and they take over Nicaragua and then move up to Mexico and so forth. So it was an illegal operation here. But the President of the United States gave us, a finding. And my part in that op was moving weapons and stuff. They moved them mostly out of the Mena airport. That was with Barry Seal, one of the pilots. He'd been in Vietnam. He trained with some people that were my handlers. One of them was named Duke Flagler from Vietnam, and Barry Sadler. A lot of people may know him, the older crowd, because in 1965 he wrote the Battle of the Green Beret, and that was the #1 hit single in our country at the time. To make a long story short, we can talk for hours about Nicaragua and all the stuff that went on, but out of the Mena airport, he took a C-123 that he called a Fat Lady, and it was out of a front company for the CIA called Ridge Mountain Aviation. And they flew the weapons down into Central America. And then the CIA paid for the operation, with the drug sales, mostly cocaine. They were bringing it back in and then distributing it. And I know several of the people that were involved in all that. So it's a big, long thing. But Bill Clinton was getting paid a lot of money by the CIA to use his position as governor to cover the op up for him. And the op ran, a little over 2 years. And they used some chicken trucks was one of the ways they moved, some of the cocaine around through the country. But that's basically what that op was. That's what I was involved in. There were 2 other nested operations at the same time. One was CIA Operation Jade Bridge, and the other one was codenamed Screwworm. And Screwworm was an op out of Mexico that was tied into the Centaur Rose op, manufacturing, machine guns, and then supplying the Contras with. And the other operation, Jade Bridge, was a pilot training op. They brought Nicaraguan pilots up into Arkansas. And they had little runways and airstrips out in the Ouachita National Forest there. They would teach them how to fly. And then during this operation, I was offered the job as hand-to-hand combat instructor for the Nicaraguan Army on the Contra side, but I was way too busy up here, doing all this stuff. So Bill and Hillary Clinton were both working for the CIA, and they were involved in a whole lot of stuff. Mostly money laundering through ADFA, that's Arkansas Development and Finance, and they washed a lot of this illegal drug money through banks like the banks in Little Rock and the Worthington Bank in Atlanta. And that was all filtered out to the BCCI Bank out in the Caymans, which was Bank of Commerce and Purdue International. So I'm skipping over a lot of stuff. That's basically, what were involved in at the time.
Right. So that basically, I mean, is where they got their start in, I guess, the deep state corruption was being the cover as governor and then laundering money and all the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And then later on, he got elected president. And I held hands with the CIA down there, which is a woman named Kathy O'Brien. She wrote a book with Mark Phillips called Transformation of America, spelled TRANCE. And she was one of the MK Ultra sex slaves. She was a presidential model. And they used her to move drugs and to do a lot of things, have sex with high-level people. And she was a word-of-mouth person. That way, she could deliver messages, say, from Ronald Reagan down to our operatives in Nicaragua, for instance. And there wasn't any ELINT or SIGINT. ELINT is electronic intelligence. SIGINT is signal intelligence. There were no phone calls, no radio signals, nothing that could be taped in case blowback happened. Later on, there was a criminal investigation or something like that. So Phil Bryan was one of the models, and she claims to have had sex with both Bill and Hillary Clinton. And Clinton had sex with a 7-year-old daughter named Kelly, and George Bush Sr. filmed it. And so all of this is in her book. If anyone wants to get that book, her and Mark Phillips had to leave the U.S. They're out. Last I heard, they were somewhere in the Philippines. She was a whistleblower. She was a CIA sex slave, mind control in the MK Ultra Monarch Project. And so, this goes real deep. Just ask questions and we'll flow and whatever we need to do.
Absolutely. That's already, that's going to be a lot for anybody to take on, but I suggest anybody that wants to go further also look into that book. I guess the thing that, for me anyway, and I guess I'll speak on the behalf of our fans and listeners, where you got started in the CIA and doing things, was it just like maybe agendas of higher than, just the Clinton administration, but more elites that were having you carry out operative missions throughout the world?
Yeah, no, I was basically ground type personnel. We weren't real high up in anything. I was an asset, and we had people in the CIA that had sensitive jobs and needed done. And some of them, they didn't want any pie back to the CIA. So they have assets worldwide, all around the world, at different stations, station chiefs around the world have lists of assets that are not on the CIA payroll directly. They're not case officers or agents, but they're people who are called upon to do jobs as necessary in that station. So I did a lot of ground level stuff. We moved a whole lot of drugs. We moved a lot of weapons, hand grenades, mortars, C4, explosives, all that kind of stuff. And we were more ground guys,
Okay, so with that, I mean, I guess carrying out these operations as a ground, we'll say agent. So how did it get to the point where you came back and was offered the opportunity, I guess, for the Oklahoma City building? And did that building contain something that they wanted to destroy? I take it there was files had to be in that building that they wanted taken out, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, that was an op. By 1994, I was just getting ready to retire after 20 years, and I had been hurt real bad. I got nerve damage. I'm 100% disabled now, broken bones, lots of different things from operation. And so anyway, I had severe PTSD, and I was drinking real heavily, to self-medicate to cover my post-traumatic stress disorder. And in the fall of 1994, in October, a guy named Harold Leonard, and he was another guy that worked for the CIA. He'd been in China and stuff. in various places. He had multiple identities. But he offered me that job, for $1 million to bomb the MER building, and I hadn't heard about it. And the story's in my book, Choosing the Light, Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing. It's available on Ole's website, lightonconspiracies.com. It's a 700-page book. Took me 4.5 years to write it. It's chock full of all data and facts and stuff like that. We don't have time to get into all of it now. But anyway, they offered me that job, and I turned it down because I was going to retire. And I told Harold, I can't do this stuff anymore. I'm having bad dreams. I can't sleep at night. And I'm not going to do this to our own country. I didn't mind going overseas like we did and doing operations there, but I wasn't going to do it here. And then about 6 months went by, and April 19th of 1995 is when the MER building went off. And then McVeigh, of course, got tapped, to do that job. He'd been a Desert Storm veteran, and he was an MLN A1 tank commander, and him and Terry Nichols were in the same platoon. And McVeigh won a Silver Star over there for confirmed tank kills. But the reason why the MER building was bombed, this is where I got to slow down here, because I'm skipping over decades of time. Right. This is very important for Americans to understand why the bombing happened, because McVeigh was just a patsy, just like Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy in the Kennedy assassination. There was a massive cover-up, and here's the reasons why. Go back to Iraq. I'm getting a bunch of interference static on the line now, so I'll try to do my best through all this. We usually get hit at the tectonic attack during this, and if the phone gets tapped off, you're going to call me back because they've been hitting this phone. I had an interview in Norway and other ones, and they've hit almost every one of them. So okay. I'm surprised we've gotten this far as we are. But anyway, I'm getting echoes now on the line. When I'm saying a word, it comes back 2 or 3 times. I don't know what you're hearing on your end, but this is definitely even.
It's actually really clear on our side. So.
Military intelligence jamming type stuff. So anyway, what happened basically in Iraq, I'm going to cut out a lot of stuff here, all in the book. Saddam Hussein was an asset for the CIA and the party, and he worked for us. And they got into a big war with Iran, like an 8-year war, very bloody. We were worried that the Iranians would overrun him because he had a 10-to-1 infantry advantage. And so we gave him the same strain of anthrax and a lot of other weapons like the Hawkeye 123 cluster bombs and so forth in case he got overrun. And after the war was over, Donald Rumsfeld, who was Secretary of Defense at the time, they gave him satellite intel and a bunch of stuff. And so after this war, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and he turned from an asset to a liability, just like me, just like Turiaku, just like a lot of the other people who went astray of the CIA. But anyway, they had to stop him. So they cooked up the Desert Storm invasion that began in January of 1991. And here's the problem. We had covertly armed Saddam Hussein with anthrax in case the Iranians overran him. And then I'm going to try to focus through all this jamming and these repeats. I'm getting hit really hard right now on my end of this phone. But it's hard to concentrate. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you good. It's good on this side.
A lot of interference. Anyway, so Saddam Hussein, he went in Kuwait, and then he turned from an asset to a liability. And the normal shots of anthrax take 6 months. There's 1 shot for each month to build immunity. And George Bush and them in that time, they posed 6 tank divisions on the border of Kuwait with Saudi Arabia. squalene. Squalene is an adjunct. An adjunct is something that builds immunity in your system. It makes your body see adhesion with the virus, and cut it all down to one shot. So you only needed one shot in 1 month immunity for anthrax instead of 6 months. Well, they cooked it all up. They wait FDA approval, and they give it all to our approximately 480,000 of them. And I have all the lot numbers and vaccine dose numbers, all kinds of stuff in the book. But our guys went over to Desert Storm, started getting sick, and it hurt their autoimmune systems. And this is what they call the Gulf War syndrome later on. Now, the thing that made our people sick was the use of depleted uranium weapons. There were two primary configurations: uranium-238 weapons that were using the M1A1 tank busters. They call them the silver bullets. That's like lithium clay was shooting over there. And then they had the A-10 Warthogs. I got friends here. They're A-10 Warthog pilots in Iraq, and used the 30 millimeter use uranium. Well, what happened is that when they used these weapons for the first time, this is the first time they'd ever been deployed in war, there was a bunch of secondary consequences, just like the Agent Orange in Vietnam. Okay, and so these things made big fireballs. They created new compounds, high heat, pure depleted uranium, uranium dioxide, uranium oxide, and our troops started breathing this dust. And our gear, the biological chemical weapons gear that our troops had, only the filters went down to 10 microns in particulate. So uranium oxide, these molecular groups are about 4 microns. And so our guys were breathing them. I'm getting to the Murrah building, okay? Our guys were breathing this stuff, and uranium radioactivity concentrates in two main areas of the human body, the thyroids and the reproductive glands. So when our troops got back, they made love to their wives and stuff. And this radiation was being transmitted in the semen into females, and then the kids were getting it. And the Pentagon had a big problem. They did not know how many generations down this radioactivity would be passed, and they had a potential hundreds of billions to trillions of dollars in long-term medical costs. You follow where I'm at right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, so they had depleted uranium and anthrax, and they called it the Gulf War syndrome. The Pentagon wanted it all to go away. And there was a senator, Republican from Connecticut, and he sat on the Armed Services Committee, and they gave the FBI about a year to gather up all the records. So you got to remember what is happening here. The war was over, and approximately 480,000 of our troops came back, and a lot of them were getting sick. And they were going to give them money, just like the Vietnam veterans got the Agent Orange settlement from DuPont Chemical. Years and years went by to the low-level exposures for dioxin, and it created a whole series of medical problems for the Pentagon. And so Christopher Shea was the senator from Connecticut, and he gave the FBI a year to gather all the medical records because they couldn't determine how much medical culpability or money to give our sick veterans unless they had all the medical records. And that's where they stored them, was in the Murrah building. And when the Murrah building was detonated, all those records were gone, and that got the Pentagon off the hook for untold amounts of money. And also the records from the Bill and Hillary Clinton fiasco down in Arkansas with the aforementioned Central Roosevelt and all the drugs and all the stuff that went on down there. Those records were moved to the Murrah building just before it was detonated. There was a FBI agent in the Little Rock, Arkansas field office, and he called a detective named Craig Roberts in Tulsa, and he gave him a heads up saying, hey, someone's ordered all these records to be moved out of here. And all those records were put in there. So when the Murrah building blew up, that got the Clintons off the hook with a lot of questions from the Whitewater investigation. In August of 1994, Ken Starr was appointed the Whitewater prosecutor. So there was, it was really good for the Clintons that these records disappeared. And a third thing, the other records about Waco, what happened at the Waco compound down there in Texas with Branch Davidians. And I know one of them that was down there, and I've got a really good story that he told me about what really happened at Waco, not all the government lies that went out. So the three main reasons why, that building was detonated, and then they laid it off on their patio, their fall guy, which was Tim McRae. And so the lies that were sold to the American people are really deep and really immense. And in my book, 700 pages, I have lots of research, details, evidence, so forth. So it's just a basic, I could talk a long, long time, but that's just a basic overview of why the Murrah building was bombed.
Yeah, that's already I mean, that overview is already in depth and amazing just to hear it from somebody that actually witnessed it. I guess one thing that I have in my mind that's kind of lingering around is based on the administrations, the Clintons that you worked through, and I'm sure other administrations. Do you believe that these agendas or these things that are carried out in these three main events that you're talking about, does this just carry on to every new administration, like completely controlled?
I don't know. I can't answer that because I don't have access to all the classified information. But there's certainly an elite group, a shadow government group, that controls our country underneath the political machinery of, Democrat, Republican. We all believe we have a vote that makes a difference in everything. There is a shadow government that operates underneath it. And a lot of it's the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower had warned us about. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all these big companies, Raytheon, all these defense contractors, they wield immense power, and they're there whether a Democrat or Republican's in office. They're there. They don't really care much who the president is. They build their weapons and do all their stuff. There's a lot of really deep stuff that the American people never were told about in the mainstream controlled media. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it does. It's, I guess, everybody kind of, hears these stories, and especially people that do research. Like I said, I suggest everybody listening, go get the book, and then you could gather a lot more. But when you do research, you start to see into this world, and then you find people that, are so locked into their party that the Clintons are the bad ones, the Bushes are the bad ones, whatever it is. But I have a feeling that it goes so much deeper that it just rides on, and then,
That's what that excuse me, that's what my question was, Jake. So my is the Clintons and the Bushes and whatnot, how far do you see them up the ladder as far as the powers that be? Are they just like pawns in the game? Are they a part of the ultra elite?
Well, they're the elite in America. The New World Order people, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, the international banking cabal.
The
They have
and whatnot.
people like that in every country, like Tony Blair over in England and Angela Merkel in Germany. And these politicians come and go, and they can make and break a lot of them. A system. They don't control everything completely, but this New World Order cabal uses their people inside each country, like the Bushes and the Clintons, to get things done. While they're slowly pushing this world to their one world government. We've all seen the evidence of that. George Bush Sr. in some of his speeches, he referred to the New World Order. We can see a New World Order coming into view. He said that like 17 times in one of his speeches. So I'd say they're mid-level from a worldwide perspective, and they come and go. And these people can give immense amounts of money and support to either side, Democrat or Republican or Workers' Party or Communist Party or whoever it is. And they have the power to influence wars and all kinds of things.
So do you think there's somebody above the DuPonts and the Rothschilds?
op I was in is just one little op. You know, they've got thousands of them at the time. You know, different presidents. You know, Nixon, Reagan, Carter, Bush, all the way through. They're just mid-level type of people. The world order.
Right. So they're basically just useful. They're just put in place to achieve certain things for them. Like so, but the Rothschilds, obviously, like the Rothschilds, they're putting everybody quote unquote knows about them at this point as far as the Illuminati and the whatnot. But do you think that there's somebody beyond them? Do you think that there's somebody above them actually pulling the strings that are doing more than what we actually know about?
Well, it could be, but I don't have information about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, being that somebody that's seen a lot, obviously firsthand, do you believe that we're closer to a one world order in this new generation, or are we finally starting to uncover enough with like people like Ole out there, you know, decoding some of these encrypted secrets or events? So you think we're closer to them being at one world order, or are we getting farther away waking up, in your opinion?
There's two basic factions, you know, the forces of light and the forces of darkness. People like Ole, they're in the forces of light trying to get the truth out and wake people up. And then the forces of darkness, like Rothschild or Rockefeller, they want the whole world. They want all the resources. They want all the oil. They want everything. They want to have smart grid cities. They would like the microchip, the so-called market beast. They have 5G coming online now in several countries to handle the data streams, such implantable RFID devices. And they have a long-term agenda that occurs over decades. And so they're getting closer to it. You know, there's geoengineering, spraying nano aluminum and barium. They have a variety of multi-nested operations. We could talk about that for 2 hours on the geoengineering stuff, but they're doing it worldwide, and they're poisoning, you know, the air, and they're poisoning a lot of the water supplies with fluoride, you know, to dumb people down. The Nazis used that in their prison camps to keep people controllable. They were the first ones to use that technology. Their game is to use high technology and false flag events like the Murrah building or 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination or any number of them, and create fear in the populations and mind control them and get them to accept giving up their national sovereignty and accepting this new world order. And the signs of this are everywhere. And thanks to people like Ole and other people, you know, that are whistleblowers like John Yaku and Dr. Greg Ford and other people like that, they are all trying to get out secrets that this cabal doesn't want known. So they're both working right now. And will enough people wake up to stop this new world order? Maybe. Will they censor us into the Stone Age and kill off enough witnesses and hide enough information that they can implement it? That is yet to be seen. It's the forces of light and the forces of darkness. You know, darkness, they want lies and fear to control you, and the light, they want truth and love and helping, you know, to set you free. You know, the New World Order wants to control your mind. They use psychotronics. I have a section in my book, it's chapter 10, it's about CIA mind control. We do a basic history of it, all the way from the Nazis, the Illuminati, Project Paperclip, and so forth, through the MK Ultra, the MK Delta, the Monarch mind control program is that Kathy O'Brien was in, and then the Stargate program and Project Slammer, that's the one I was in. That one, that was a 10-year study from the NSA, DIA, Navy, and Air Force intelligence about why spies burn. There were two options for that, the white op and the black op. Within the black op. So anyway, I hope that answered your question. I'm trying to cover a lot of stuff in a short.
No, you're covering a lot of things that I guess another thing, because I guess it would have been about the time when they said that they ended MK Ultra, which I don't necessarily believe they end any of their projects that they start. But do you know any kind of more details or firsthand accounts with MK Ultra experiments, or what that actual process that they were trying to achieve with that?
Yeah, there was about 149 sub-projects. And after World War II, you know, the Nazis had many concentration camps, Dachau and Auschwitz, and a whole bunch of them. Once they were liberated, they found out that they'd been experimenting on people. One of them was Joseph Mengele, one of the doctors who did a lot of work with twins. He was given a code name, Dr. Green, and he was brought over to the U.S. here. And a lot of the high-ranked Nazi intelligence officers that were involved in mind control and the SS occult division, which was a little division inside the SS, a real secret one. They were all into Satanism and Illuminati stuff, mind control, sexual ritual abuse, all that stuff. Well, they brought them over here to our country and did those type things. There was hundreds of them. They were teaching us how to do our stuff because in 1947, that's when they got the code, you know, for the CIA. Strategic services with and so anyway, I did have dinner one night with a guy in Colorado Springs that was from Los Alamos, one of the other CIA brought him up, and he was a Nazi that had been involved in Operation Paperclip. I actually got to meet one of them and talk to him, and that was way back in the late 1980s. But anyway, all that stuff's real, and Operation Paperclip morphed into all the mind control stuff, MK Ultra, MK Delta, Monarch, control programming, and on into the Stargate program, which was later on, that was a remote viewing operation. It was done by the CIA first. Some of the guys were David Morehouse and McMoneagle. They worked with Ingo Swann from Israel. They used the front of the Stanford Research Institute. That was in California there, Stanford University. They also used McGill University up in Canada. I believe that was in Toronto, Canada. And McGill University was a front for the MK Ultra program. They used psychiatric wings and injected people with LSD and all types of mind control and stuff. And Stargate program is morphed to the Defense Intelligence Agency. And then later on, they did stuff like Project Slammer. That was in '84 and '85 when they studied it, but it went 10 years, all the way into 1995. Our building was. So they have all of this stuff, and it's there. Just like you said, you're absolutely right. At the Frank Church hearings, I think that was in '77 here in the U.S., him and Senator David Warren got on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and they were reopening the Kennedy assassination and talking about MK Ultra and all that. And the CIA director at the time, I think it was William Colby, told him, no, you know, we're going to quit and we'll stop. And just like you said, all they did was go underground with it deeper and tried their very best to hide it from the American people. That's why they need all this drug money, Rose and all these ops, you know, the heroin out of Afghanistan, China White that came out of Cambodia and Laos with the Triad during Vietnam. That was Agent Soling knows a bunch about, you know, Felix Gomez, Oliver North, all the generals, Ed Shackley, the CIA agent. All that was an op bringing a lot of drugs back into the U.S., and that's how they fund all these covert mind control and black operation programs. They can't go to Congress and grease them for that kind of stuff. They fund their assassination programs. That Project Slammer, the back part of it was a black ops assassination program. That's the one I was in. You could talk about that for another hour if you want, but whatever you want.
Why don't you tell us about the project that you were in, the Project Slammer? Go ahead and tell us a little bit more about that. And then
Project Slammer, like I said, there's a 10-year study, and what had happened in the United States, there was a guy named Oliver James. He was our station chief in Moscow, Russia, and he came back to Langley to finish out his 20, and he had been turned by the KGB over there, unknown to the CIA, so he was spying for him, and he eventually got caught. He's down here now in Colorado at the Florence Supermax prison doing life without parole. There's another high-level guy named Robert Hansen, who was an counterintelligence specialist, 26 years, and he was turned by the KGB. And so he was spying, and he got caught too. And he's also doing life in prison. There's some other people like Walker and telling the missile secrets for submarines to the Soviets and so forth. So Project Slammer was sold to the Congress, the White House part of it, as a way to do psychological testing and hopefully weed out people who were going to turn on their country. Okay, and so they interviewed Hansen and Baldersames and all these people and gathered all this data. The Black Op part of it was a way to use mind control technology to kill at a distance. In other words, you don't have to send a physical assassin in with a gun or poison or a knife or whatever. It was a way to use mental energy, directed energy, also with microwave weapons, synthetic telepathy. I have a whole section in my book about the synthetic telepathy devices that were made under covert contract at E-Systems in El Paso. How they were field tested in the Vatican over in Rome. But it was all the mind control stuff. How to send thoughts, how to hear telepathy, how to influence people at a distance, and then they pushed it on how to actually kill people. That way, it would be like the crown jewel of assassination program. You wanted to assassinate a premier or somebody, there wouldn't be any physical evidence. There wouldn't be any poison to find in their body when they took tissue samples at a forensic autopsy using a gas chromatography mask under, which is what shows you poison, like you get with strychnine or any of that. You can find it in the body, and they know the guy was poisoned. If you use directed energy weapons like microwave lasers or mental energy, you can actually affect the target's physiology to the point where they die. And then it looks to the coroner's office like natural causes.
Well, I was going to say.
So that's what they did to me in Project Slammer. They killed me with that. I said, oh, wait, it's on that. I died twice in a civilian hospital here in the States, and they had to shock me back.
Well, I was gonna say for the listeners.
They thought it was food poisoning. They can actually use mental energy to do work. The MK Ultra program had 149 sub-projects, and some of them dealt with psychic, energy, mind control, influencing people, putting thoughts in their head with telepathy and all kinds of use clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, any of the spiritual tactics to weaponize. It's like when you take a dolphin and they would make a dolphin swim to a ship and strap a satchel charge on the back of the dolphin. They were trying to use any method they could to enhance their capabilities. And this falls in the field of psychotronics, like new weapons you've heard about, directed energy weapons made by Raytheon, for instance. They use microwave lasers at certain frequencies, and when they hit your body, they can make your capillaries in your brain explode. And then when the doctors look at it, there's no sign of the microwave energy. It's just like cooking a hot dog in a microwave. You can turn it on high and watch the meat expand and eventually blow up. They can do that to your capillaries. They can shut down your heart, the signals to your heart. And it looks like natural causes to the forensic pathologists doing the investigations. The old Kennedy assassination back in '63, they knew he'd been shot in the head. But the stuff they've got now is way past that. They can kill at a distance, and that was the beginning of the Stargate program. Okay, and that program was a remote viewing program. They would put guys like David Morehouse, Ingo Swann, Joseph McMoneagle, and different ones. David Morehouse wrote a book called Psychic Warrior. People can get. I think it's still on Amazon. But what they did was they put them in little cubicles, and they trained them to project their spirits out of their bodies and look at Russian missile silos. Like in the Kamchatka Peninsula or in the forest in Siberia. They had them observe submarines. And so it was a way to gather what they call psych intelligence. And they cross-correlated the science other forms of intelligence, like big int, signal intelligence, photint, which is photographic intelligence, ELINT, which is electronic intelligence, like from NSA intercepts and stuff, and then UNIT, which is human intelligence actual physical spies. So this whole board ways to gain information about your enemies. I used a remote viewing project, Stargate project over in also in '79 when our embassy was hit in Tehran, Iran, and they captured our station chief and tortured him to death, and they moved our guys underground, and we couldn't get any satellite or human intelligence, and so they tasked the remote viewing people to try to find them to get a handle. And I know some of the guys that were in that project. One of them was a guy named Glenn Wilson, Captain Glenn Wilson. He did a couple of tours in Vietnam and then worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency later on. So these projects are all real. Mind control is a big thing because if you defeat your enemy with propaganda and psyops, then you don't have to send in the guys with guns. And you can do coups and all kinds of things and not get caught at it. But the new field of research they were getting into in the Stargate program and later Project Slammer was psychotronics. It's psychological manipulation of a human being by electronic or mental means. The Russians also did a whole bunch of stuff like this too.
When you're talking about these kind of weapons, do you believe that 5G plays a role in this for upcoming?
It's possible. The frequencies 5G, they're between 30 and 300 gigahertz. Now, hertz is a cycle per second, and giga means a billion. So you're talking about frequencies between 30 and 300 billion cycles a second. And the reason they created 5G waveform so they could compress a lot of sub-carrier signals in it, along with the main signal, and therefore carry a lot of data stream. For instance, if you're downloading a 2-hour video on your Apple iPhone, instead of taking, 15, 20 minutes, it can go down to 4 minutes, and they can compress data streams. That's what the New World Order needs to be able to have smart grid cities. And people with RFID microchips in them, subcutaneous chip. Now they put one of those in Timothy Bay over in Desert Storm. Excuse me, that's all in my book, dude. They gave them their anthrax shots and all the different shots, and then they selected certain people out to covertly test a program for Lockheed Martin. And like I said, I have it in my book. It's called the BEAST program. BEAST. It stands for Battle Engagement Area Simulator Tracker. It was a program by which Lockheed Martin satellites would then read the RFID chips through real life battlefield conditions, such as in Iraq, with oil well fires, dust, smoke in the air, so forth. They gave one to me, and he came back from the war, and his right butt started itching, and he had a sore on it, and because the protein coat that they put on the microchip to trick the autoimmune system in the body, that was all under testing back then. And the stuff they have now is way past this. He had to have it moved. And there's a whole lot of things that people don't know about McVeigh, that I have in that book too. But the 5G is a new tool. It's a technology, and it can be used when you modulate certain frequencies to affect biophysical and physiological and neurological changes in the human body. It can be weaponized, in other words. You've heard of those, like in the Boston bombing. Do you remember that, where they had those MRAPs going down, the black MRAPs going down the street, and they had those big dish things on the top? Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Yep.
That's a way to use psychotronic weapons. And they can use 5G to heat your skin. They hit you with a modulated microwave beam, and it can out control. It can make their skin real hot where you just want to run away from the area. They can make you dizzy. They can make you confused. There's a wide range of psychotronic applications for the frequency you're talking about on 5G.
Yeah, very interesting, because I was wondering, because they seem to be pushing that more than anything else, and it just seems the amount of effort to get these towers up and the way they're pushing it seems to be more for an agenda than for a quicker download speed.
Right, and if you look back to the old cell phone towers, back to the 80s, the 90s, when they started building them and putting them up all over like the states here, I know they're doing it in Sweden and Spain and all the different countries, but those were the old, cell phone signals before the 5G, and they modulated around 840 megahertz. And so those lower frequencies happen. It just so happens that the natural resonant frequency of the human cranium is at 840 megahertz. So when you're holding your cell phone up to your head and those signals are coming in there, those signals are modulated, okay, with carrier and subcarrier waves, set up a resonance inside the human cranium. What does that do? It's just like if you see a hot dog in a microwave, you turn it on high and sit and watch it. You can see the changes happen, and these types of waves have been weaponized. They can affect the endocrine system in the human body. Your pineal gland, that's the thumb-shaped gland under the corpus callosum inside your brain. There's the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, all of these pituitary, all these glands produce natural hormones like serotonin and melatonin, neurotransmitters. And when you affect them with weaponized electromagnetic radiation in the frequency around 840 megahertz, then you can make people sleepy, make them angry, you can make them nauseous, you can make them lose a will to fight, where they just want to get on their knees or lay on the ground and not do anything. And all of this stuff has been experimented by various militaries throughout the world. The U.S. is the only one that does it.
Absolutely, I would imagine so. Yeah, that's a lot already in the first hour. I guess the one thing that I was also a little curious about is in Waco. You see that Timothy McVeigh got interviewed or whatever. So, I mean, you find these people end up in these weird events, but was Timothy McVeigh, and I know you said it was in your book, which I have not read yet, by the way, but was he like a vital part in being used as somebody to serve out all these agendas?
I don't understand your question.
What was Timothy McVeigh used before they asked or after they asked you? Was he just kind of in all these events, kind of just on standby for them, or like you said that he had an implant in his butt cheek? So was he kind of like just on standby for a patsy?
I don't know that. In my book, I tell what limited stuff I know about him. After they offered me that job and I turned it down, like I said, I became a liability. And I don't know what all else they did or who they offered the job to or whatever happened. And then when the murder building went off on April 19th, about 9:02 or 9:03 a.m. Central Time that day in 95, that's the first I heard of Timothy McVeigh or any of those guys. But he wrote several letters to his sister Jennifer, and he had come back from Desert Storm, and he had seen a lot of really strange things. And when he found that microchip in his right buttock, this was a covert program. They didn't ask his permission, and he got kind of mad. I mean, would you get mad if someone injected you with a microchip? Used you like a guinea pig in some tests? And so he wrote those letters. We have copies of some of those letters to his sister Jennifer in the appendix of the book. But then he went to Fort Bragg. He was going to be a special forces soldier, and while he was studying there and going through the training, he said these are all again in letters to his sister Jennifer that the CIA approached him and 10 other guys, and they wanted to make them covert assets, and they were to go on with their special forces training, and that was going to be their front, okay? And they were really going to work for the CIA, bombings and drug runnings and assassination and so forth. And he rejected that because he didn't want to do it. And then later on, he went to be a security guard up in New York at a company that worked, had it in my book. They were working on a lot of really high-level government stuff, like ECM tables, electronic countermeasure tables for theft. ended on April 19th, 1993, exactly 2 years before the Murrah building was blown up. And there were 54 dead and 21 children dead there. But I knew a guy named Ron Cole, and he was a Branch Davidian. I am not a Branch Davidian, but I knew Ron, and here's the story he told me about Dan McVeigh and the Branch Davidian compound. Ron said that he was real good friends with David Koresh, and that Ron's mother had got sick in Florida, and he flew down there to take care of her. But when they did that, the feds hit the compound there in Waco. And he saw part of it on the news before they cut the news feeds. And he flew immediately back. And when he got there, the feds had already closed off the Waco Branch Davidian compound, and they set a perimeter up. So Ron Cole got with some of the other Branch Davidians that were out in town shopping and doing things that day. And they had binoculars and telescopes, and they were watching what was going on at their compound and what the feds were doing to that standoff. And according to Ron, he said at night they saw these freaks in the sky. And some of them were green, some red, and they didn't know what they were. And they said, man, we wish we had some night vision, so we could see what's going on. And some guy walked up in the darkness and said, hey, I got some night vision, and they stood and looked at all of it. And they said, who are you? He said, I'm Dan McVeigh. And he goes, those are blacked out choppers. They're firing M60 machine guns down into the Branch Davidian compound. They circled it every night. And the lights they were seeing were tracer rounds. The fourth round on those M60 belts are a tracer. And so they realized then that they were, shooting up the compound, and these Branch Davidian they've never been in the military, and they go, why are they doing that? It's standard tactics. You deny the high ground to the shooters. Standard infantry. Whenever you've got a perimeter surrounded, you deny the high ground, and it pushes the shooters that can go way up high, it pushes them down to the lower levels of the building, and therefore they can't shoot as far. It then collapses the perimeter of the building, you understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that allowed the feds to get closer to the Branch Davidian compound. But most of them were already dead, machine gunned up in there. And then later on, on April 19th of 1993, they had a so-called fire down there. And that whole fire, they waited for a windy day. They set it themselves. And the fire covered up crimes that had been committed by our government. And that's the story Ron Cole told me. There's more to the story that's in the book that contacted officers.
Yeah, we actually covered an episode on Waco, and it was talking about people that were helping out on the day after the fire had found bullet holes through some of the skulls of the charred bones.
Yeah, and there were two Texas Rangers. I got their names in the book. They went there to investigate after the fire had burned it all down, and there were two steel doors at the Branch Davidian compound. And the question in court was, were the bullet holes coming from the outside in or inside out? Who started the shots? Because the Branch Davidians claimed that the feds showed up, ATF showed up in trucks with cattle cars, and when the Branch Davidian dogs went running out to bark at them, the feds shot them. And then they started shooting at the Branch Davidian compound. So David Koresh and all these guys started shooting back. And when Ron Cole was down in Florida and he heard the news, he called and actually got through to David Koresh before the feds had cut the phone line. And Koresh had been shot by that point. And Koresh told Ron Cole exactly what had happened. Now the feds came out with their line. They said they pulled up there and the Branch Davidians opened up on them for no reason. So much evidence. They went to get those subpoena those two steel doors from Branch Davidian compound. After it burned down, they were laying there hot in the ashes, and the Texas Rangers, both brothers, saw them. They said in depositions that the bullet holes were from the outside in, proving that the feds started shooting first. And when they were going to get the two Texas Rangers in court, suddenly kiddie porn showed up on their laptops, both of them. And they they were indicted by the feds for interstate child porn for some ridiculous charge. And what it did was, there's a law saying you can't testify in a court trial if you got a felony indictment. Well, it took them 3.5 years, and they finally proved that the feds were lying, and actually not a defamation of character lawsuit and some money paid to them by the feds. A lot of people don't know all this stuff, got all the details in this book. But they went to subpoena, they couldn't get the the two steel doors. 4x8 steel doors. And they'd been put in the ATF holding down in Waco where they had them. And the ATF, when they were subpoenaed, the ATF told them that the doors were lost.
What?
2 4x8 steel doors.
Yeah, when you hear stuff like that, it's not surprising because pretty much anything that's incriminating always goes missing somehow.
Sure, that's what they do in the Murrah building. That's what they do in 9/11. That's what they did with the Kennedy thing. All they know is a whole lot about Kennedy. But, you know, I guess we're getting pretty close to closing here. But the thing is, you have to remember, in the 1960s, I was alive then. I was in Dallas on the morning John Kennedy was shot. And 10 years later, my high school, our old Spinner High School in Farmers Branch, Texas, they took us on a tour, field trip to the Texas Airport. And we got to go there, and one of the security guards was a World War II guy, and my dad was a World War II guy at Harbor and Guadalcanal and all that. So I started talking to him, and I said, "Can I stand there?" They had a little red square painted, you know, where Oswald supposedly stood. I said, "Can I stand there and look out the window on the 6th floor of the Texas Depository?" And I looked, and I've been shooting a long time, and I said, "There's no way you make that chop because it's pretty moving across the whole thing." And the security guard, World War II guy, goes, "Yeah, I've shot a lot of people, and I don't think they can make it." The whole thing was all swag, you know, and that's when they started killed our Dewey was performed, and they took away our president. And the guys had been in Vietnam, Wisconsin, and escalated that war. And I think Malcolm X, and that was all the deep state put in its muscles. Go through the 60s and 70s, the 80s and 90s, and all that, and now the deep state's been doing nothing but growing power. And most of the presidents and a lot of the important senators and stuff are all been controlled by them. They've been controlling with the control files. That's my book. How the CIA uses the control files. Compromise people with sexual stuff, like party and get some pictures of you or whatever. It's a way to control judges, or to control politicians, to control bankers secretly from the shadows and get them to do their bidding. So there's a whole section about the control files in there too. The common software that the Department of Justice uses and so forth. That's a software program designed for the DOJ that steers cases. Anybody like me, or Westboro, or Dr. Yahoo, or William Denny, NSA guys, that cases are steered to CIA judges, or judges that are controlled secretly by the CIA. That way they can control the case.
Yeah, I actually I can't wait to read your book, to be honest with you here. I guess really that kind of takes us to the probably end of this interview. Maybe we could have you back on another time, have you back in you and Ole at another time.
We've only just scratched the surface. I've covered, like I said, several decades of time in different countries like Iraq, Iran, and so forth. There's so much more here. It's just I'm very best to do a brief overview, and Ole knows a lot about this stuff too, like Operation 40 with Gomez and Rex Gomez, Felix Rodriguez is his real name, and all those people like and so forth. So there's a lot to cover here, and if we got time and our phones on cut, you know, we can certainly do some more.
Well, I would absolutely love to have you on again. And again, I thank you for coming out and telling your story, because obviously, if we didn't have this in the world, people would still just be confused, you know. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that might, you know, not believe who you are or what you have to say. But the main point is that you tell it so that the people that are listening and want to be, you know, waking up in this world, we do appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yeah, we were just trying to get the truth out. A lot of these are hidden truths. People can believe whatever they want to. The governments of the world, especially the U.S. government, they have a vested interest in keeping their people mind controlled and dumbed down and doing what they want and not asking any questions. And, you know, if you're going to be of the light, then you got to get the truth out. That's why I titled that book, Choosing the Light. I went from being a black operator and doing all kinds of dirty, nasty things to actually trying to help people through change.
That's awesome. And I appreciate your time, Cody. Again, we thank you from the Lost Info podcast. Jake, do you have anything to add?
No, I just cannot wait until we tap a little bit deeper into it. Cody, I really appreciate your time, brother.
You got it. We love you guys. We love Ole. Ole's been at this a long, long time, and he knows a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. We connected the first interview that we had, which we've got a lot of traction. I'm sure we're going to get even more on this one. So please go to the show notes below, go to Ole's website, buy this book, help Ole out, help Cody out. With that, again, thank you very much, Cody, and we will do this again.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Holy shit balls. That's a lot, man. That's a lot in an hour.
That was a lot to soak.
I don't know, man.
I'm
right
still
now, I think
downloading all of that.
yeah, I think we're all gonna have to process that. We're kind of, you know, we had a little bit of problems with the connectivity and the voice at that point.
I'm so blown away by that.
Me too. With that, I think we're just gonna end, let everybody process this information. With that, I guess the Lost Info is out. As always, it's keeping you awake, Jake.
And Jake.
Peace.